Okay, everybody, we have an exciting webinar today that's talking about the messy middle. And I think every single one of us have experienced the messy middle at some point in our lives. In fact, right before I started the video, there is a messy middle that we were individually talking about. So I'm going to turn it over to Carol Asalian, who has written a master's project on the title of What Derails Performance in the Messy Middle. So Carol, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you, Peggy. All right, so what we're going to do in the next hour is I'm going to introduce the topic, introduce the research, then we'll go into our first breakout, then come back and focus on the analysis, the results of the research. We'll have a second breakout, and then if you have any questions, please interrupt me, ask at any time. Don't hold back your questions. You put it in the chat and ideally just discuss it out loud. Okay, so Brene Brown, right? Brene Brown is probably the one that popularized the term messy middle in her book Rising Strong, where she defines messy middle as that middle space in your process, in our process of change, where you're feeling like you're in the dark. But she's not the only one that talks about the messy middle. You have Darla Anderson, who is a producer at Pixar, who she talks about Act 2 of storytelling, where the messy middle, she calls it the lowest of the lows. And then you have Daniel Pink, even in his book, When, he talks about that midpoint that characterizes the muddy, when you're feeling numb, you're in that mud, you're feeling numb and your progress stagnates. So messy middle is really what we're going to focus on, okay? When we talk about the messy middle of performance, you'll see that performance is going to be synonymous, interchangeable with striving to achieve our goals, okay? And the aim of the project, as we were mentioning earlier, Peggy, is all around equipping coaches, equipping me as a coach, equipping you all as coaches as well, to better support our clients, to prepare for the messy middle and to get through the messy middle. Okay, because it's obvious that our clients come to us, coaches come to us because they want change. They want something different, a change in behavior, a change in habit. They want to elevate their performance. So they come to us because they want change. So goal research, right? When we look into the goal research, it's plentiful, right? There's a lot of research out there about goals, but it's general. That goal research, there isn't so much research out there that focuses in the context of coaching that can help us as coaching. So it's very general. And not only is it general, it's very complex. They talk about 31 different goal-related theories with 4 different dimensions. So it's generic, the research is generic, and it's complex. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to get into the research, but what we wanted to do is just start us off in the mind frame of really focusing and talking about your experience with clients who want to achieve our goals. So we're going to put you in a breakout. So we're going to put all 3 of you in a breakout. Introduce yourselves if you don't know each other, and also really focus on sharing an experience you've had with a coachee.
Okay, Carol, we messed up because we didn't realize Joe had joined our room. So it was only that Diana and I that kept talking.
All right, Joe. Oh,
we should give her a chance.
Joe may have dropped off. I don't see her. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh no. Well, in the meantime, Diana and Sapna, so how did it go? Well, like, talk to us about your experiences. There are things that you had in common.
I think one of the things I think we had in common were the ultimate outcomes. You know, through some challenges in by the client in improving on their goal, they still ended up in a good place. Is that fair?
Yes. I think Diana's example shared how by the time she started working with her client, perhaps some of the coaching could not be applied right away, but then long-term it was applied for success, right, Diana?
That's fair. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and similarly, I was sharing the circumstance was this particular client, multiple goals. One goal was absolutely met. The other one, I think, is just going to take a lot of long-term intentional work.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
I think sometimes if we look at change theories and we think about, is the person ready to change? Okay.
Yeah.
Think they're ready, but are they really ready? And I'm sure Carol's going to talk more about that with us as we move forward. But they think they want to change, but maybe not.
Oh yeah. So to give you, and Sapna and Diana will actually come back to exactly what you said, because it comes out in this research. So quick overview of the research. It was a 60-day period. The research took place over 60 days from August to October 2022. And participants had flexibility in not only what their goal was, so they were to select their own goal, and we gave them flexibility over the start date between the periods August and October. We used mixed methodology to analyze the results. So the quantitative aspect of the research, we had three surveys that were executed in 3 points in time. The first survey was on day 1 of their 60-day goal pursuit journey. The second survey was at the midpoint, day 30. And then the third survey was after 60 days, right, in their goal pursuit journey. There were 27 core questions that were consistent across the 3 surveys, those 3 points in times. And we used the 5-point Likert scale to look at the level of agreement in their questions, right? The qualitative aspect of the research, we had 2 periods of reflection, okay, where participants were asked 5 questions to reflect between day 1 and day 30. And then the second point of reflection was between day 31 and day 60. So that gave us the qualitative research. And then we had the final debrief. The final debrief, there were 10 questions where participants had the option to either submit their responses in written format or to touch base with me either through Zoom or through a telephone conversation, okay? So these participants, I really just sent out a call for nominations, call for volunteers, either through my network, and then Peggy did the same thing. So call for volunteers through our network on social media. And the only requirements we gave is really that, 1, you had a goal that you wanted to achieve over the next 30 days, and that we were very clear on the expectations, right? So that we were very ethical in how we conducted. So this is what the requirements was. And we also provided an opt-out at any point in the 30 days, okay? So some of the participants that took us up on our offer, they were coaches themselves. Others had previously achieved goals in different settings. Okay. So we will report on the outcome, and we had in total 26 participants who wanted to be part of the research. So of the 26, we have outcomes for 21 of the 26. So 81% we have outcomes for. And we only interviewed 20. So one did not take part in the final debrief. So 21 outcomes and 20 where we had a debrief with them to just look at their entire 60-day journey. So that's a quick overview. We looked at 19 factors based on the literature review. What were the factors that contributed to goal achievement, right? Elevating performance. And of course, I had Peggy there to vet the factors and vet the questionnaires. So we looked at the 19 factors. And based on those 19 factors, we developed 27 core questions. So for example, there were factors where there were multiple questions. So if you look at a factor, habits, factor 9, habits was a factor. Well, there were multiple questions. We double clicked on that. So did you stop? To what extent did you stop your old habits? To what extent did you begin new habits? Okay, so that was 19 factors, 27 questions across 3 points in time. We then took our research questions of what derails performance in the messy middle, and we divided it into 3 sub-questions. Okay? The first one was, how do you prepare for the messy middle? And that preparation phase, as Peggy was mentioning, that preparation phase began the moment they agreed to being part of the research right to the messy middle. So we wanted to really focus in on that preparation stage. The second question, which we double clicked on, is what do you do when you're in the messy middle? And then thirdly, how did you get through the messy middle? So those were the 3 sub-questions, and I'm going to break them down. And then we'll share conclusions and recommendations. So outcome, remember, this was self-identified outcomes based on 4 options. So at the end of the 60 days, we asked them to tell us, did they fully achieve their goal? Did they partially achieve their goal? Did they not achieve their goal, however, are still in pursuit of the goal beyond 60 days? Or did they not achieve their goal and have abandoned their goal? Okay, 1 of 4. Here's what the 21 participants told us. Who has fully achieved their goal? 0. Nobody. That just shows how difficult it is, even though they themselves have identified their own goal. Okay, 0. How many have partially achieved? 13 of the 21, so a little over 61% partially achieved their goal. Okay. Then we asked, so 7 of the 21 did not achieve their goal, but were still in pursuit of their goal. And then 1 abandoned their goal. Okay. And those 7 that were still in pursuit of their goal, again, that goes to the importance of their goal. Okay. Questions, thoughts, comments? Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet, absolutely. All right. So then we looked at the first of the 3 questions, right? So how are people prepared going into the messy middle? We analyzed the survey, we analyzed the reflections, and then we really based this on their final debrief, what they told us. And we asked 2 questions specifically related to the level of preparedness. And we asked, what helped you most prepare for the messy middle? And then what could you have done? What's a single thing you could have done more or better to prepare you for the messy middle? Okay. Just want you to know that some participants identified more than 1 response, right? 1 thing. So sometimes they gave up to 2, a few answered 3. So we incorporated all of these into this table. So you will see the number 1 response that came out, 60% of the participants said Planning helped me most prepare for the messy middle. Okay? And then we asked, well, what could you have done more? 12 also said, I could have better prepared for the messy middle. And some of those 12 were the same person. It helped me most, and I could have better prepared for the messy middle. Okay. Number 2 factor, what helped them most prepare for the messy middle is breaking things down. Okay. Breaking down goals, breaking down their tasks. Okay. 40% said that helped them most. Okay. And then 45% said, I could have broken down my tasks and my goal even more. That would have helped me prepare for the messy middle. I'll let you take a look at the rest. Okay. Then we said, we went on to then question 2. Question 2 is about the messy middle. And we said, when you are in the messy middle, what was the greatest challenge you faced, right? What was that greatest challenge? 40% said dealing with competing priorities or competing commitments. That was their greatest challenge. 20% said, I experienced health issues, whether it was physical health or mental health issues that posed the greatest challenge when I was in the messy middle. Okay. And then you have, again, planning comes up. Lack of planning was the greatest challenge. It came up again. Right. The other thing that came up, and we'll talk more about it a little bit later, is the greatest challenge was staying positive. Again, I'll let you take a look at the other factors that the participants have identified that was a greatest challenge to them.
I'm really intrigued by the first one, competing priorities and commitments, because I seem to be running into that in all of my coaching engagements right now. Is the level of burnout. People are flat out working and they don't have time to do things. I resemble that remark with my clients.
Yeah, Diana, you're so right. And I sort of say, so life happens, right? That's life, right? In terms of course, and Peggy mentioned in the sport analogy, and in the sport analogy, we say we prepare, we train, not for our best days, but in the sport analogy, we say for our worst days, right? So the idea of the preparation is something that we'll highlight again and again. And again, Diana, we'll talk more about that preparation, right? It comes out again and again.
Really important. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then we said, okay, so when did you know that you were in the messy middle? And how long did the messy middle last? Because intuitively you're thinking 60 days is 8 weeks. The messy middle should be on day 4, week 4, right? Well, surprise, surprise, the messy middle is not in the middle. The messy middle is before the middle. So we had 60% of the participants, the majority of the participants said, I faced the messy middle anywhere between week 1 and week 3. Right? Again. And this is information that would help coaches, right? That would help us as coaches support our coachees. So then we said, all right, how long did the messy middle last? What was the duration in weeks? Right. So 50% said it lasted anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks. And 45% of the participants said it lasted more than 4 weeks, right? So the messy middle lasted anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks, which is the duration of the research. Okay? And one thing is important, I never at any point had to explain what the messy middle was, how it was defined, right? The participants knew it intuitively. They felt like they were in the mud. They felt like they were in the dark. So they knew intuitively that they were experiencing the messy middle. Okay? So how did they get through the messy middle? Well, that was question number 3. What caused the participants to get through the messy middle? 25% of them said positive thinking, looking at the success. And we know as coaches, the neuroscience of leadership is important. That neuroscience, that dopamine, right? That's what actually helped them most get through the messy middle. Then 20% said the importance of the goals. The goal was so important to me that that helped me get through the messy middle. And for us as coaches, we are fortunate when, or the clients are fortunate when they're in a position to self-identify their own goals. But what happens to clients and coaches who have a goal imposed on them, right? That's even more difficult. Again, getting through the messy middle, 20% said it was because of how important the goal it was. If it's an external factor, such as your leader, your business unit, right, your organization imposing a goal, then it's no longer intrinsically important. What chance do they have as your clients to achieve their goal and get through that messy middle? Then 20% said, what helped me most was my ability to change my old habit. Again, you heard Peggy talk about change, right? And again, we'll talk about change a little bit later, but 20% said their ability to change a habit. And 15% still talk about their plan, how important it was to get them through the messy middle. I'll let you read the rest. Okay. So then we look at our conclusions and our recommendations. So conclusion, I mean, you could have written these. The conclusion is it's difficult. It is exceedingly difficult. Nobody fully achieved their goal. And what's important to us here is that during the final debrief, when I was speaking to the participants, I shared with them that in fact, nobody had achieved their goal. They felt a sense of relief that they were not the only ones. They no longer felt like they were doing something wrong by being the only one to have not achieved their goal fully, right? They're not alone. It actually made them feel better. So part of us as coaches, we reflect, do our clients even understand how difficult it is to achieve our goals, right? Then obviously planning is key. The importance of planning comes up again and again throughout the process. Motivation is key. Having a goal that's intrinsically motivating or wanting to change intrinsically is important, and yet it's not enough. Okay? It's not enough to achieve the goal, to change your behavior, to elevate performance, because change is difficult. Okay? It's not enough. You need more than the will to change. Messy middle is real. Okay? The coaches don't know about the messy middle. And one of the participants told me, why don't we talk more about the messy middle? Right? So they're not familiar with it. And we as coaches, if we're not familiar with it, it's very hard to prepare our clients, our coachees, prepare for and get through the messy middle. And then positive thinking. Okay? We know the conclusion is positive thinking is a critical factor for success. Right? And it's so important that one of the questions we asked in the debrief is, when did you know you were going to achieve your goal, and how did you know you were going to achieve your goal? That was the question we asked. When and how did you know you were going to achieve your goal? Mind you, 0. Nobody fully achieved their goal. But of the 13 who have partially achieved their goal, 12 of the 13, so 92% of the participants who partially achieved their goal interpreted that question favorably from a positive perspective. So again, that's what you were mentioning. That's what we were mentioning earlier, Diana and Sapna, we were mentioning how even that partial achievement of the goal or achieving the goal at a later time is actually important and helps with feeling positive about the goal. So 92% interpreted the question favorably, and those 92% recalled vividly one experience. It was because of this moment that I knew I was going to achieve my goal, even partially. That's okay, right? They experienced success and progress. They felt confident. They had a key person that they look up to, that they respected, that they saw as credible, tell them that they were doing something well, pointing something out. Or they actually had a physical reaction. Everything I'm describing leads to Albert Bandura's self-efficacy theory of motivation, okay? Which is you feel good, you're motivated when you believe in yourself, you believe in your skills, you believe in your capabilities, and you believe in knowledge. And even though you may not believe in it, you have someone important to you that believes in you, in your knowledge, in your skills. Okay? And then you also have that visceral reaction. And participants told us that I kind of knew I was going off track when I had the feeling that I was going back into my old habits. Okay? Then, based on all of that, what are the recommendations? So coaches need to get informed. Coaches want to get informed about the messy middle. How do you prepare for the messy middle? How do you manage the messy middle? How do you get through the messy middle? And the way to do that is not to simply jump in, not to jump in. So as coaches, we want to inform our coachees about the messy middle, and most particularly inform them about just how difficult it is to achieve goals or to change our behavior or to elevate our performance. We want our coachees to take the time to plan for their journey and prepare for that messy middle. And we know through change models, whether it's Prochaska and Prochaska talking about the trans-theoretical model of change, right? Where they go into that pre-contemplation stage or that contemplation stage or that preparation stage. Those are the planning and preparation for action. Okay. Changeology model tells us the same thing. We know from Norcross that talks about being psyched up and being prepared for change, right? But I can tell you that the participants who were coaches, who had previously achieved the goal, just jumped in, okay? Because they're anxious. They want to get to change. Then I call it go mini or go home. The need for coaches to work with their coachees to break things down, okay? Create mini goals, create mini tasks. If you're not achieving them, and if you're not celebrating or rewarding yourself enough, break them down even more. Break them down to an extent where you can check that box. You can get that neuroscience, that brain working for you in your favor. Okay? And you want to obviously celebrate those successes. And then lastly, don't be alone. Don't be alone as coaches. If the goal is important enough to the coachee, they need a coach. They need someone who can guide them before, during, and helping them get through that messy middle, because we know that every single participant, every single person experiences that messy middle. They all experience messy middle. Okay? So if you know family and friends that want to go it out alone, the minimum they could do is find someone, find an accountability partner that holds them accountable. And we had 3 participants actually who mentioned the fact that it's that Hawthorne effect. They said, well, just because I know that you were watching me, that held me accountable to keeping me on track to achieving that goal. Okay? So even though I wasn't coaching them, my mere presence, your mere presence, okay, a friend's mere presence keeps them accountable to their goal. Okay, so that now that you're kind of equipped with some of the research findings, we're going to set you up to go into your second breakout. But in the meantime, before we do that, what questions do you have about the research, about some of the findings, about the messy middle?
Carol, my question is going to be a little general because I cannot remember the details of the research that I'm referencing, but it was really interesting. I listened to this research segment on NPR. And what they were talking about, they didn't use the terms messy middle or anything like this, but they were talking about goal achievement. And what they said was what they have found is when people are, the example that they honed in on was striving for weight loss. What they found is people make it about halfway through, or sometimes even a little bit more than that. And rather than looking forward to find all the inspiration and the aspiration for the goal, or rather than just, if you will, the endorphins around what they have achieved, they look back and it actually creates backsliding. So in other words, they actually move backwards away from their goal. How does that sit in, like I said, I don't know all the details, but I just remember this story because I was like, oh, wow. So how does that sit with your research around what you were saying? I was taking some notes around positive thinking and looking at success.
Oh yeah, and I know that Peggy specifically about weight loss, Peggy has done tons of research on this. One of the things I would say, and through my research, that's breaking the goals down is the key, because what you want to do, you're in that messy middle. One is, as coaches, you want to let your coachees know that it's okay to slip. It's not linear. Slipping is part of the process, right? It's sometimes called recidivism. You are going to slip. Most people slip, and that's okay. So that's why you want to plan for those slips. Well, what happens when you slip? Right? Visualizing and having a plan that helps you visualize, okay, look, I slipped. This is normal. I've anticipated, and this is what I'm going to do. So having a plan is important. And then breaking those goals down. So it doesn't become about your big goal that's in the next 3, 6, 254 days. It doesn't matter. The focus is on getting to that next goal, which is a mini goal, which is about, you know what? Maybe my goal is walking for 60 minutes a day, but that's not today. Today it's about 5 minutes. What can you do today that you could achieve? 5 minutes. If you can achieve 5 minutes and check off your goal, that's what gives you the endorphins. That's why you have your brain working for you. If you can't do 5 minutes, that's okay. Do 1 minute.
Thank you. So really it's, when you're talking about positive thinking, endorphins, it's not necessarily around that big goal, which can create the slide. Because if you say, look how far I've come, oh, look at how far I still have to go, then you could go backwards. versus what you're saying is focus on the incremental action plan, which makes sense. There was a client I was with, and a nationally known Peloton speaker, like the Peloton coaches, was the speaker, and she talked about the same thing. She said her most unfavorite term is when people say I have to get back on track or get back on the horse. And she also was focusing on, well, why are we so focused on the fact that we fell off of something?
Yeah, very much so. Peggy, what did you have to add in your research? Specifically?
So I think that one of the biggest mistakes we make as coaches is that we don't factor in how the brain works. Okay. And Carol is spot on when she keeps coming back, many, many, many. Okay. And so what happens from a mini perspective is that we're doing small. One example I've been using with my clients is if you have one negative thought a day for 20 years, you have over 7,000 negative thoughts. And now you think you're going to replace all those negative thoughts with one positive thought. So that's why we have to start small, because the brain is wired to do what it's always done. And we're overcoming wiring. And small helps us overcome that wiring. So it's not just the positivity, it's recognizing that what I have to do is change new behavior and create new wiring. And so I think we miss that in behavior change.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so we have one more breakout. All right, so Sapna will put you and Diana together, and the question is based on, and Sapna, you would.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So based on the research, what can you use the most in your practice? What resonated the most for you? Diana?
Yes, one sec.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I am actually.
It's great seeing you, by the way.
Me too. Hold on.
What you want us to go with Sapna first?
Yes, please, because I'm in line to get on a train. I'm sorry.
No, nothing. I'm glad you're here. Nothing to apologize for.
Oh, actually, I'm ready to jump in. How about that? Okay. So I think a couple of things that I'm taking away is, I'm thinking about messy middle in the context of changeology. And, when you get some traction, you start to backslide. This is the messy middle, thinking about your motivations, helping your client understand their motivations and breaking it down into small steps. I really like that. And I have a client now who is so overwhelmed with everything, and we have different goals, but I think that I could help her break down some of the goals to even a more finite, and that's really going to help her. So doing that planning, that replanning with her on the goals, and I've already said, yes, let's pick one, let's pick one and see what we can move. But I think, like, in the context of the research, really and using the term messy middle, I like it because it lets them see this is not unusual to get in the middle of your coaching and feel like you're not going to make it or you're not going to achieve your goal, and understanding it's really a longer term investment. So I think that's what I'm taking away, and that is exactly what I'm going to apply in my coaching session with her tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes, and the other thing, I love what you said, Diana. The other thing about goals, achieving goals, elevating performance, all of that is, you remember those 19 factors? Every one of them is critical. Right? That's the other thing we've learned, is that we've looked at the research, even quantitatively, and we saw people who have not followed or not adhered to the behavior change actually have abandoned or have not even partially achieved their goals. So I know we're focusing on the planning and the mini goals, and every single one of those factors is key. If it's not fun, they're going to abandon, right? So if they don't have that social support, they're going to abandon. That's what the research also told us. That's why only 8% achieve the goals. Sapna, I know you'd already shared with us. What else was your takeaway or anything you wanted to question?
I liked your research around the messy middle is actually between week 1 to 3. And 70% said the messy middle lasted anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks, because I think the application of that is really getting coaching engagements off the ground quickly. I think, Peggy, you and I had talked about this at one point, which is it's Marshall Goldsmith that said when he's working with CEOs, oftentimes they don't get 12 hours of coaching. They don't get 10 hours. They just don't have the time. So he has to go from 0 to 100 really, really quickly in order to meet their requirements. But that combined with this idea of the messy middle actually being between 1 to 3 weeks gives me impetus to get that momentum going early on. And I think the other piece of research I really liked, it was around, oh shoot, I can't remember. It was that idea of other people keeping you honest.
Yeah.
But that it was actually quite low on your research, which is interesting because that to a large degree is the role of a coach, or at least one component, as well as a development network. And it was interesting to me that it was down quite low.
And yes, and none of these participants had a partner. None of these had a coach. So these were all independent, even though they are coaches themselves, they were not coached, right? They went at it alone. If we have I'm going to share my thoughts about if CEOs, the C-suite, are reluctant to hire a coach, I would question them in terms of what I would say is, well, prepare them for the messy middle by asking them a question. What happens when you have your earnings that is lower than expected? What happens when, yes, you want to achieve this goal, you want to grow your business by 20%. Well, what happens when your chief financial officer resigns and you haven't created a succession plan? What happens when, right? So sort of present the challenges that you think that role or that person will meet, and see if they're prepared, see if they've thought of it. If they've thought of it, they've planned for the challenges, then that's at least a first step. If they haven't planned, haven't thought about it, hopefully they will see that they're not ready for the messy middle.
100%. But the challenge is, Jeremy Dean in his book on making change says people don't want to talk about what could go wrong. They only want us to talk about what's positive. So a lot of times what I use is a question with teams and individuals, what is going to take you there and what's going to get in your way? And that comes right out of Boyatzis's intended change theory. Okay. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? What's going to help you? What's going to get in your way? And I think if we say it like that, they understand something's going to get in your way. And how can we remove those obstacles as we start making the plan? So that's what I love about Carol's research. I mean, she called it out. So something you said about Sapna, you're spot on about people not saying that other people help them. If you're trying to achieve a goal and you tell people about it and you don't achieve your goal, it's worse than not having help. And so they have to go back and forth between, do I want help or do I want to just keep it to myself until I get there?
Very much so.
Mm-hmm. So Carol, what do you want to leave us with? Like, what's your one thing that you want to leave with us and coaches as far as what do we need to focus on?
So funny. It's the one thing. What's the one thing? I think more than anything, it's getting informed, right? Getting informed and just being there. Even you believing in your coachee, actually goes a long way. We saw that through self-efficacy, like somebody believing in me. And when they're not in that headspace, they don't have the confidence, you believing in them actually goes a long way.
I love that. And I have had so much fun with Carol because I've been with her on this whole journey. It was a fabulous study. She did such good work in doing the analysis and working with people. And I think it really is something we need to think about, that change doesn't happen. We have to engage change. And there are components, those 19 factors are really important to helping our clients change. So thank you for doing this for us as coaches and making the contribution to what we do in our work.
Absolutely. And just
Thank you, Carolyn.
oh,
Thank you so
with
much.
Diana, with
Thank you very
pleasure.
much.
And Sapna, thank you. And the one thing is that we as coaches, we can't know everything, right? We can't know everything. So relying on other coaches to support us is actually so critically important.
Unless you're Peggy.
And by that, it's Peggy. We all know
Always.
it's Peggy. Peggy has been
Always
instrumental.
Peggy.
And we all feel that way about you,
Absolutely.
Peggy. Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
so
we do.
much for coming today and joining us. And we will have the recording available. It'll be at the website if you want to go back and listen to some of the information that Carol shared. Be safe, Diana. We'll be
Thank you.
And Carol, I'll talk to you in 30 minutes.
Sounds
Bye
good.
bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Peggy.
Thank you.